Both Ken and I knew that we didn't need another book on suffering that just helped people cope with suffering. I think one of the things I struggled with a lot was that my life was not turning out like I expected, but I did have this deep faith in God, and I knew his word was true. And so I was trying to reconcile these things and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with the fact that, he says to ask and you shall receive? What does that mean when you don't receive? I was basically living the book as I was working on it. My husband, Ben, and I met in Colorado at a Focus on the Family program in the summer of 2002. And about a year after trying to start having kids, we saw a doctor, and then we moved cities. Then we started over with doctors. And we basically just kind of started exploring what might be wrong. And I'm a very analytical person, so I was trying to figure it all out. It became very all-consuming. And I think in the end, we had exhausted all of our options by about 10 years in, and we just decided we're done. It's kind of an inevitable question, like when you walk into a church or when you walk into any situation and you're meeting somebody for the first time, that's a question is, are you married? Do you have kids? And those are some of the most dreaded questions for a single person or somebody who hasn't had kids. There was just this growing sense of not being able to feel like it could be understood. And, one of the messages I think that we often send, even in the church, is that being a wife and a mother is the greatest calling we can have. Those are extremely important callings, and that is not more important than following Christ. And so I felt like this trial really showed me that can be the only thing that you rely on for your identity, and it can't be anything else. But I think this was the process that God used to a large degree to lift my sights. If our hope is in this life, if everything here looks really great, heaven doesn't look so great. It was actually one morning a couple years ago when I was looking in the mirror, and I was thinking about the fact that God has given us 2 great commandments. They're the greatest things we can do. Love God with all our hearts and love other people as ourselves. So I really started to ask God to make me content and without a child, and help me to desire what you desire. People compare writing a book to giving birth to a child, and writing this book was a great joy and privilege. By the time I got to the end of it, I was pretty exhausted and I was pretty ready to be done. In the month right before I was finished, Ken and I were putting finishing touches on the last draft that we were going to submit to University Press, and I was exceptionally exhausted, and I thought, what is wrong with me? Like, I enjoy doing this, but I am just ready for this to be done. And so I took a pregnancy test just to make sure. To my absolute surprise, it was positive. I had never had a positive test. My initial reaction was, this has to be wrong. It can't be right. But I did go to the doctor the next day just to check, and the doctor walked back in and said, you're 6 weeks pregnant. I looked at her, I said, are you sure? Are you serious? I had absolutely no idea that I was pregnant. Having just finished that book, it definitely was not a coincidence. And Heidi Joy Abel was born July 29th, 2019. Really rough 36 hours of labor, but that didn't seem like anything compared to 11 years of infertility. We are actually completely cannot even believe that she's here. We still look at her just kind of in awe that she even is here. But the thing of it all is that I never wanted my story, whenever it did end, if it did end in this life, I never wanted it to be one of those ones that was just like, look, God finally answered our prayer, everything's great now. Everything is great and everything is okay, but it's not because of that. And I think that is the hardest thing for me, is just to realize that if she weren't here, it would still be okay, that God still was with me, that he had sustained me, and that he is the ultimate hope in this life. And that needs to be the case now, even now that I have Heidi, and she has an amazing testimony now too.